Hi, this is Mr. Curry, and we're going to go over some basic swimming and floating, survival floating. Okay, we have Mr. Griss in the water right now. He is doing what we call treading water. Treading water is something that you're going to be able to have to do in deep water to stay afloat. What you're doing is you're moving your arms back and forth, and at the same time you're kicking in a circular motion under. So if we can see him moving nice and slow back and forth to keep his head above water. Now, if he gets tired from doing the treading water, what we would do is go to a back float. So he's going to switch to a back float, and now there's not any motion, so he's kind of taking a rest in this position. If he wants to move towards maybe shore, he's going to do what we call a sculling motion, and he's going to push water towards his feet. And that will get him to move in the direction of the shore or the wall. Our next progression with swimming on our back, we like to stay on our back because we get our head out of the water and we can breathe. We can make more progress moving. We have a couple of different strokes. The first one we're going to go over, from a float we will go to the elementary backstroke. So one of the things that we do, and we're going to bring our arms up so that our hands are into our armpits, and then at the same time we're going to do a scissor kick and push. So they are going at the same time. If we do this, we don't have to do it fast. We can cover a lot of ground and not waste as much energy. The next stroke that we would do from the back is our back crawl stroke. Okay, it's going to use a little more energy. We're going to be flutter kicking, and we're going to be stroking over the top. So the arms will rotate over the top and then pull and push the water at the same time as kicking. You're going to use a little more energy doing this, but it will be faster. Our next progression with strokes is on our stomach. The first stroke that we're going to do is breaststroke. With breaststroke, you're going to be able to get your head out of the water, catch more air breathing, and also focus on a point that you're swimming to. Mr. Griss right now is going to demonstrate the breaststroke. The arm motion is going to be pulling towards you and then get towards your chest, and then you're going to kick your hands out through the middle. So you can see his arms coming in front of him, and then he's doing the breaststroke kick. It's almost like a frog kick, and they're going to go from a pull to a kick and then a glide. And you can see how his head is up. He's able to breathe and see where he's going at the same time. Our next stroke that will be on our stomach is called the crawl stroke. Also freestyle. Some of you may be competitive swimmer and you know it by freestyle. This one, you're going to be able to cover more ground. It takes a little energy, but you're going to have a breathing pattern where you're going to turn your head to the side to take your breath. You're kicking with a flutter kick at the same time as pulling. It's good to have your head completely in the water when you're doing it and breathing to the side, because it will keep your body nice and flat and you'll be able to cover enough ground. Okay, now we're going to put these strokes together, and Mr. Griss is going to swim them in actual speed. We'll start off with the elementary backstroke. You can see how he can cover a lot of ground with some strong pulls, and he's not using all of his energy. Okay, the next stroke, staying on our back, is the back crawl stroke. We'll have Mr. Griss come across doing the back crawl. The breaststroke. So we're going to watch Mr. Griss do the breaststroke. Is the freestyle or crawl stroke. We're going to have Mr. Griss swim across us right here.
And I'm just going to be going over some points of sailing. So before we go out and launch,
we always want to look at what direction is the wind coming
Anybody
from.
got the channel for the freshwater
So,
guy?
what I'm looking for right now is anything around me that's going to tell me what direction the wind is coming from. So if I look on shore, there are a set of flagpoles over there. I don't know if you can see them off in the distance. So the wind is actually coming from shore out onto the ocean. So if I'm looking at the sailing zone, I'm actually looking at it from this direction. Our wind's coming from here, okay? So here's our sailing zone. We know when we sail, we can never go directly into the wind, okay? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to use the wind to push on our sails and get us going in the direction that we want. Now, when we launch off of the ramp today, we're actually going to be doing what's called a jibe or a run. We're going to be going away from the wind. So when we go away from the wind, our sails are going to be wide open because we're catching as much wind as possible. Now, as we go offshore, we're going to then turn our boat and we're going to do what's called a reach. So when we're going perpendicular to the wind, okay, so if the wind's coming this direction and we're going perpendicular to the wind, we're doing what's called a reach. Now, there are different kinds of reach. Okay, we have a close reach, a beam reach, and a broad reach. And if you look at the diagrams, it really determined by how your sails are. If your sails are in closer, you're in a close reach. If they're opened up a little bit more, you're in a beam reach. If you opened up even more than that, you're in a broad reach. Now, when it comes time to start sailing back to shore later, we're gonna be coming into the wind. Now, when we come into the wind, again, we cannot go directly into the wind, or what's gonna happen is our sails are gonna luff, kind of like what they're doing right now. Okay, so you see our jib sheets kind of just flapping around. We're not going to catch any wind. So in order to sail into the wind, we have to do what's called a series of tacks. So tacking means that we're going back and forth in different directions to try to go into the wind. Now, when we're tacking, we're going to pretty much be in this position where our sails are going to be in really, really tight to our boat. So it's going to be what's called a closed hull. Now, when you're tacking, that's actually when you feel like your boat's going to be kind of going over because you're catching wind and you're catching quite a bit of it. But you typically won't go over because of your centerboard or your keel counteracts what your sails are going to do. And we're going to talk about that a little bit when we're out on the water. But that's always the first thing that we want to look at is what direction is the wind is coming from. Now, if there are no flags, there are other things that you can look for out on the water. If there are any boats on moorings, they'll always be pointed into the wind.
Unless the current.
Okay, unless the current is kind of pushing them. If you're in like a river or something like that, it might tweak it a little bit. You also have here in New Bedford, we have a lot of factories. So if you look at the smokestacks, what direction of the wind blowing from the smokestacks? Actually, right now, if you look across over towards Fairhaven, they have the wind turbines. If the wind turbines are going, they'll typically be pointed into the wind. So those are all things that we're going to look at to see what direction the wind's going from. If we were on a bigger boat, they would actually have a weather vane at the top of the mast, but we have a smaller boat. Ours does not have that. So again, these are our points of sail, and we'll talk about these a little bit more while we're out on the water today, and we're videotaping us doing some sailing. This is Mr. Varon. We've just launched our boat, okay, from the ramp. So right now we're actually doing what's called a run. So we're actually going away from the wind. This is actually a good opportunity to look at what we're doing here. This is what we call wing on wing. So because we're running, we're going downwind, we're able to catch wind in both of our sails. So our main sheet is catching wind right now, and so is our jib sheet. Okay, so we're gonna run out towards the channel markers, and then we're gonna actually do what's called a reach, which means we're gonna turn towards our starboard side. Okay, our sails will end up coming around onto our port side, and we're going to do a reach, which is sailing perpendicular to the wind, and we're basically going to follow the channel all the way up towards where the lighthouse area is. Okay, so what we're going to get into right now is called tacking. So we're going to be going into the wind when we're doing this. So right now we're kind of sailing on a little bit of an angle. Now when we tack, we're going to turn our bow back into the wind, so we're going to turn towards our port side. Now the key to this is as we're tacking, you don't want to let up on your sheets too early, because if you don't get enough speed going into a tack, you won't make it all the way around and you'll have to swing back around again. So typically when we're out here on the boat, we'll give the commands tacking in 3, 2, 1. I'll let the people know that are working the jib sheet when to let go of that. Once we let go of that jib sheet, we make our turn, and then we take control of our main sheet as we get through our turn on our port side. So hi everybody. everybody, this is Mr. Barham. We've now made our way, we're kind of following the channel markers as we go up. We're kind of doing a reach here, so the wind's coming across on our starboard side. So if we look at our sails, they're just outside of the boat a little bit. And again, sailing's all about redirecting wind. So we're catching the wind coming from this way, and then it's coming off our sails and going towards the stern of the boat. Now, while we're doing this, our centerboard is counteracting what our sails are doing. So our sails are really turning our boat and really tipping it onto its side. Now, the more I pull in on this main sheet, the more on our side we'll go. And again, right now, what's keeping us from totally capsizing, okay, or going over, is our centerboard. Now, as I'm up on angle, if I ever want to flatten this out, a real simple way is to just lift up on our main sheet, let it loose, and it will flatten our boat back out a little bit. Okay, we don't have very strong winds today, so you don't feel it as much, but that's one safety precaution we always tell kids as they're working the main sheet. Okay, if you ever feel uncomfortable, like you feel like you're going to capsize or people are not comfortable in the boat, you're real simple. We're just going to lift up again as I go up on my side here. See, as I tighten up into the wind, let loose, and it's going to flatten us back out again. Okay, another way that you can do it is if you're steering the boat. This is a little bit harder to do. So again, if I'm sailing and I get up on edge with the wind, I'm going to try to do right here, waiting for a little gust. Okay, what else I can do is I can actually take the boat and I'm going to steer it actually into the wind. Now when I steer it into the wind, we will flatten out and our sails will luff. Okay, that's kind of like a last resort. It's much easier to actually just pull up on that main sheet and do that, okay, while you're sailing. With today's lesson, so we've talked about the different sides of the boat. So we know that this right side is our starboard side and our left side is our port side. Now, one other thing we want to go over is what we call our windward and our leeward side. So our windward side right now is actually our starboard side. And why? Because the wind is coming over it. So our leeward side is our side that our sails are on, which is our port side. Now that's important because if we have two sailboats that are coming towards each other, okay, and we're talking about right of way, we would have right of way because our windward side is on our starboard side. And if we think about it, the boat coming in the opposite direction, their windward side would be their port side. So that constantly changes depending on which direction you're tacking. So right now, if we had another boat coming towards us, we would actually have right of way towards that other sailboat. Now, when it comes to motorboats, typically 99% of the time, a sailboat will have right of way over a motorboat unless that motorboat is under distress. So the engine's not working, something's not working. In that case, they're going to signal you to let you know that. So typically, sailboats have right of ways over motorboats. And when you're sailing, if there are two sailboats coming towards each other, whoever has the windward side on their starboard has right of way.